So AJ, what's it like to be in class?
It feels weird going up to ask the teachers questions. I feel like I'm annoying her, and I'm bothering her, trying to work with the other kids.
But you just need a little extra help, hey, to get the stuff done.
Yeah.
Yeah? What's the hardest part going up to Miss?
Is kind of, I feel like I already go up there enough, and I'm not, and I don't need it. I'm getting embarrassed because I keep on going up there.
So Sonia, when we last spoke almost 2 years ago now, AJ needed a speech therapist, an outside tutor, and plus you bought some technology for him at the time, saying you spent upwards of $5,000 a year, say, ballpark. Are those costs still happening for you?
Those costs are still happening. There are other costs that come in effect, but for those things, those are going to be standard for him throughout his life. So there'll always be tutoring expenses. We have changed it up. We're not only doing the reading tutoring, we're doing a math tutoring program, which I actually purchased myself so that I could try to teach him. And we are looking at speech therapy because unfortunately the school just doesn't have the ability to provide the speech therapy. He saw the speech therapist once this year since he started in September.
So there's still a huge demand then on the system for
Definitely,
speech therapists?
Definitely. I think they have one speech therapist that is going to that school, which is now a combined school of grades kindergarten to grade 6. Torbay intermediate classrooms are in that school, housed in that school. They will be moving out, but the speech therapist that is there is the only one for that whole entire school.
And would you say the speech therapist then is overwhelmed?
Extremely overwhelmed. There's no way that she could take in the capacity that she needs to do. And unfortunately for my child, he is just what they call an R child, so he does not pronounce his R sounds, which does impact him greatly for the technology that we want to use for him, because he requires a dictation system so that he can actually dictate his work rather than have a teacher transcribe it for him. And without fixing his speech, the dictation system doesn't work that great. So it is important for him to get that fixed, but I understand where the school is coming from, and her resources are better placed with children that have more demand on their speech.
So let's just take a step back then. For AJ, what does he require, or what is in his IEP, I guess, his educational plan to help him succeed in the classroom?
His individual education plan has a number of different accommodations. The main accommodations that he has are he's to be read all of his instruction and evaluation. The instructions are to be repeated on questions. He's been given extra time to complete his tasks. All of his instructions are to be transcribed, or when he's given an answer to the question, he is to be able to be the teacher sit down and write his answers, because sometimes he'll lose his train of thought. And also he's to be given an alternate setting. All of his work is to be also given on a digital format so that he has access to that. Those things don't really play a major role right now, where he is only in grade 6, but as he ages, they will be.
And are his needs being met in the classroom?
No, it's impossible. There's no way that these teachers can do what they need to do in a classroom size of upwards to 30 students, and a number of students needing extra help. Not only extra help, but just everyday help. It's impossible for her to be able to provide all those services to all those kids and all those needs. And if you have a child that is quiet, not like some other child that is very loud and has no problem to say, can I have help, or I need more assistance, can you explain that to me one more time? AJ's not a verbal child that way. He does not like to be brought attention to. So unfortunately, he kind of slips a little bit. His teacher does the best that she can, but he is not willing to go up and say, hi miss, can you explain that for the 5th time? He's just going to sit there and not ask, and do the best he can.
So you've had to, when we last spoke, you had to be, you took it upon yourself to be an advocate.
Yes.
To make sure that his voice is heard and that he does get the resources he needs.
Yes.
How is that fight going for you?
That's a continuing battle. As it was once explained to me first when he's diagnosed, be ready for the fight every year and throughout the year. It doesn't stop. We sit down and we meet with the school administration, his teachers, in the beginning of the school year. So in September, we all sit down, we go through what he needs, what his last IEP stated, and then you start trying to get those resources implemented again. By the end of the school year in June, you have everything straightened out, what you want to have done. Everything seems to be working smoothly. You got things in place. And then the summer break happens, and September you start all over again. Because as has happened these past couple of years, there are cuts to the school system, and every time we go back to school, I'm told the same thing, that the resources aren't there. There isn't the availability. We only have one IRT teacher for this school. We only have one IRT for this primary and elementary. So there's no way you can split that person in the directions that they need to be. Ideally, what we'd love to see happen would be to have an IRT in each classroom, or to at least each grade. Right now, the IRT that's in the school is split between 5 and 6. And that's probably 4 classes. So that's a lot of work for one person to take on. Or even like a teacher's aide in the classroom, somebody to assist. There just needs to be more personnel involved into being able to deliver the services that are required.
And you mentioned a little anecdote to me about a test that AJ wrote in a subject where he wasn't helped, and then a test where he was helped.
Yes.
Can you tell me about that experience?
Sure, just a second.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Can you tell me about that experience?
He had a math test a while back. We spend, unlike some kids, like, if you have, especially in grade 6, you're given a day or, a week maybe, the kid may study the night before. AJ studies for his test probably about 2 weeks before, along with the extra instruction in school, if the teacher can do it. And luckily enough, our teachers have been great. The teacher worked with them for a full week. Extra time, like helping. I worked with him for over 2 weeks, helping him, trying to get this down. He had an excellent understanding of it. The teacher and I both felt that he did. She decided that it would be best, let's try and do this for whatever reason without implementing his IEP. So he didn't have the alternate setting. She read the instructions just to the class, and nobody transcribed his answers for him. He walked out of that math test with a 55. This was material that he knew inside and out. Like, he knew how to do this. So I contacted her and we spoke about it. And I said, from now on, let's not try to do that. Even if, let's just stick with the IEP, make sure he has the alternate setting, make sure it's transcribed, and all questions are read to him. And he's given that extra time to come up with that answer. So that's what she did with his science test. Same situation, we all studied extra hard with it. And he ended up walking out with an 80. And that's such a big boost for him, because it's devastating for a child to put that much effort into studying something and to walk out and you end up almost failing. Whereas if you put the time in, and those little tiny, it's not a lot for somebody to sit down and read a question, sit down and write what you're trying to say, because you can't get the words when you start to write it, or to reread those questions so that, okay, you understand part A, B, and C. It makes a world of difference just to have those things done and see him succeed. He is able to succeed if those resources are there. Without those resources, without that extra time, he is bound to fail because he needs those things. These are not wants, these are needs for him. If the child had a disability that was physical, if the child was blind, you wouldn't take Braille away from them. If the child was in a wheelchair and could not enter the classroom, you wouldn't close the doors so that they couldn't enter. So why is it, if a child is unable to read the questions or hear the questions properly, those few oral assignments are being held back? And the need-based system of the child that's causing the most disruption gets the service is not a fair way to do it. I don't want to be going into the classroom every day and fighting with the teachers, because I love his teachers. They are amazing. I would be lost without them. They have given us so much support, so much counseling. They go beyond what they need to do in a day. They go beyond what they need to do for my child and for every other child there. But I have nobody else to voice my concern to, so I have to go and complain to them. I hate it when I walk out of that room and I'm like, I just, vented on her, and she's probably going to go home and feel completely defeated as a person. And I don't want to make them feel that way, because I do appreciate all the work they do. They just need help.
Which is something that was voiced on our Inside the Classroom panel last night on inclusive education. What did you think when you were watching that segment?
I cried. Like, it really did. It made me feel so sad, because I know the other side of it, and I know the teacher's side of it. And I've heard those complaints from teachers. I've heard them after our first interview. Teachers emailed me, messaged me, called me, explaining how much they appreciated the things that I said, and how they wished more parents could understand what they go through in a day, and they wish that they could voice their concerns and that they could speak. And they always felt like they could not speak, that they didn't have a voice. So it's wonderful that they're actually getting this medium now to get that out there, and for people in the public to understand and realize what our teachers are going through. This is not a job for one person, and this is way too much responsibility to be placed on one person in the classroom. I think that if anybody else in any other job was given, these are your roles and responsibility, they would run out of the room and say, there's no way I'm doing this job. But that's what our educators are expected. And they're trying to be too many people.
Too many people at once.
Too many people at once. It's not fair.
What would you ideally like to see happen?
Ideally, I would love to see more human resources placed on the system. So in each classroom, if you have a teacher and you have several special needs students, whether that is physical, mental, academic, emotional supports, have either, ideally it would be an IRT in that classroom, an extra instructional resource teacher. I don't think our government will ever see that happen. It would be wonderful. Then why not have teachers' aides as they have in other provinces? I'm not talking about students' aides. My child would benefit greatly if he could have a student aide, but unfortunately the student aide requirement is for somebody that cannot self-care. They cannot take care of themselves. He can take care of himself, so he doesn't qualify for that. I don't want to see student aides. I'd like to see teachers' aides placed in there. Somebody that can go around and help the students and the teacher, so to read those questions, to transcribe those answers, to give that extra support, not just to one student, but to an entire classroom. Take that pressure off the teachers. And
I guess this is a fight you see that you're going to have to keep up with going forward.
Oh, forever. I've made a commitment that, even it's not for my child, it's for everybody's child. I'm not going to just sit by and wait for something to happen. If I'm given an opportunity, if somebody's willing to listen to me, I will share my feelings and my views as to what needs to be done.
Do you think, one last question, do you think inclusive education works? Do you like having it in the classrooms?
I like inclusive education. I would not want my child to go back to a segregation system the way we had it years ago. That didn't work either. But there has to be a middle ground. There cannot be full-on inclusion without the resources placed, and there can't be full segregation. But there has to be a middle ground here that we can work out that is successful for everybody. These kids can succeed. These kids can learn, but just not in the environment that they're in right now.